Okay, welcome back again. On to the next sheet in this practice book. This time we have the complete data table that we've been assembling in sheet 2 and sheet 1. I just kind of combined them. Both tables had a list of employees, so I can match that employee in both tables and get the age, which branch, clients, last sale, net sales that we just all calculated. And I added on, the rank of how many clients they have within this business of salespeople. I'm not going to look too closely at this function, but you can take a look at it and to see how it was used. But we'll be taking a half step away now that we made this table to build up a tool set of things that we could use when we want to do, the total final analysis at the end, how to make that really easy and dynamic. And yeah, we'll see how cool these tools can be in a second. So what we'll be looking at is drop-down tables. I quickly stuck in a little practice on how to check duplicates, a bit random, and lookup functions. Lookup functions and drop-downs, good combination. And one of the best things you can have in an Excel table, because one is dependent on the second, and with just a little toggle, this is a drop-down, you can change a value that's automatically found and calculated. This is a drop-down list, and it basically gives me a list of values that I can choose. And this is a lookup function, and basically this is using this value like we do in the sum if and the max if. That's using that as like the lookup condition, and it's automatically finding it in this table based on this. So this cell, this function is tied to this, and we just made it really easy to toggle and see different types of data. And we can even see with the drop down, you can type into it and it auto suggests any value within it, and it's even going to let us not put in any value that isn't valid. So that's a good way of setting up a professional data table spreadsheet so that we don't get any bad data in the table. We only use values valid in what we want to use. So let's look at how to set up a drop-down in this little practice box. Let me open up my data ribbon so we can see this. Okay, so we'll go to this empty cell. In data, we have a item called data validation. We'll go ahead and click on that. And essentially what data validation does is it tells us in some given cell, in some chunk of cells, if you apply this to a whole range of cells, which value is allowed to be inputted into a cell. So if you have like a team spreadsheet and you want to keep the data clean and you want to help people catch any mistakes they do, you can apply these data validation conditions so they don't mess up the table for the whole team. So you can see you can limit what you put into a cell to something like a date, to a time, to a decimal, to any value. That's the default. Any cell you can just put in anything into. Custom, you can do some custom function to do some advanced things. And then we have something like list, which is how we make this drop-down table. So we'll click on list. And then it's basically asking us in this spot, what is the list? And what we can do is, click on this cell to activate it. And then we can actually click on the table while we have that window open, go all the way down, and it's going to take that cell range, just like as if we made a function that we know about. And then we can click OK. And now we can see when we click on this cell, we get this drop down that we saw above. And it gives us all the values in that range that we selected from that table. If you want to do something like alphabetize it, since this drop-down list is dependent on this list, you could do something like alphabetize table. And now this is alphabetized. And you can see also that as you change the list, if you want to keep things dynamic and able to be changed, this is going to affect any drop downs that you have. So if you have like a list of products that you want to have in like a sales table, as you add new products and delete them, you'll be able to limit and allow selection of that in a table that has dropdowns. So that's how we get that item. And now the second item is called a lookup function. And essentially what this is doing is it's doing something like SUMIF, something like MAXIF. It's saying, look up some given value, in this case, Kevin Jones, find it in a table. And then once you find it, let's find Kevin Jones. Once you find it, we specify which column next to it we want to look up the value in. So in this case, this is looking up sales, and we can see that it's getting that 1100 data point. So what it's doing is it's finding Kevin Jones. It knows how many columns to move to the right, and it's always going to choose this item in this net sales column. So let's make it again so you guys can see it. So we'll begin with the function. This is called XLookup. XLookup is the latest of the lookup functions. It's the newest one in Excel. If you have an old edition of Excel, it might not be available yet, but you have functions called VLOOKUP, which is essentially the same as XLookup. It's just a little bit of the old school edition. But it essentially is built the same way. You just have to tweak a few things. But I'm going to show the XLookup one because that's available to anyone using MS Excel on the web. So let's begin to build this function. We want the lookup value. So the lookup value is going to be this name. We'll go comma. The lookup array is going to be this column because we want to find this name in this column of names. The next input is what we want to find. So we want to find the sales. So we'll click on this column. And then we can see beyond this, we have a couple additional things we actually can't quite see, like if not found in match mode. That's some additional complicated add-ons you can use to tweak the lookup function. But because we see these in brackets, that means it's optional. So I'm actually just going to close the function now. And it spits out a value. We can check that it matches. It does. We can check if we change it to Clive. Clive is 122. Yep, so that matches. So that's a lookup function. That's XLookup. And that's quite a useful function. And it can even do something like this. If we just grab a name and we build a function again, if we build XLookup again, let's look up Austin. We want to look that up in the name column. And what do we want to give back this time? Well, we want to give back multiple items. So we can highlight B to G column. We can close that. And now we can see that's looking up Austin and it's giving back all that we want. It's giving back all of these data points. So this is a really useful thing when you have a spreadsheet in a book and you want to not be constantly looking back to the raw data sheet. You can just simply build a dropdown. With one lookup function, you can look up everything you need and you can quickly change it if you need to with a dropdown with this guy. So that's quite a useful function. VLOOKUP function, the old one that I mentioned, I don't know if it can do this. It's called a spill. It's spilling out multiple values. I don't know if it can do this, but it can do this type of lookup up this way. So moving on to just a couple of odds and ends, and then we'll get back to the data. I just want to talk about duplicates again. So we know how to check duplicates. We know how to delete duplicates, but what if we would just want to check duplicates and kind of highlight them? To do that, we can highlight this column. We can see that John shows up multiple times. We can go to Home and then this conditional formatting button, go to Highlight, and we can see all the way at the bottom, duplicate values. It's a built-in tool. All this stuff, we'll just leave the defaults. And basically, this is what's going to happen to any duplicate that we see. Let's apply that. And now we can see it's going to find duplicates, it's highlighting John because this value shows up twice and this value shows up twice. If we change a value, now that one is going to automatically get added on to the highlighted ones. If we jump down to delete duplicates, again, we know how to do that one, but I'll do it again quick. Highlight the data, then remove duplicates. We only have one column, so we just want to match duplicates in that. Click OK. One duplicate found, I think it was John twice again, and it got deleted. And then this time, we want to prevent duplicates. So if we highlight a column, if this was a big table that you want to prevent duplicates in, you could just highlight the whole thing, but I have a bunch of things going on above and below it, so I'm just going to highlight this little section. Highlight that, go to Data, and then Data Validation. Like I said, this is what allows you to limit what is allowed to be inputted into a cell. In allow, I'm going to put custom, and this is just a function you kind of have to memorize. If you don't need to be able to know how to build this function. If you just look up on Google, Excel, how do I prevent duplicates, you'll see this exact function in a billion websites, and you can just find one and use it again. This is the thing that everybody uses. So we can click OK. Now, if I try to type in John twice, it's going to say, as I attempt to put in that data, it's going to scan the whole table that the condition is applied to. It sees John above it, and it says, this isn't valid because we have defined it so that it can't have the same value twice. If we do something like this, that's going to be allowed because it's not the same exact value. Close this box. There's some additional tools to do with like checking uniques and checking duplicates. Excel Web has a new function called unique. It does exactly what we want. If we open up a unique function and as input put in this chunk of cells and close it, we can see that it's going to take all the cells inputted, but only output one of each item. And this is a type of spill, just like we had with this XLookup. We can see this faint blue highlight. We only put in one function, but it's actually putting values in multiple cells. In this case, it's going down. XLookup went this way. Kind of on the same note, just a way of tidying up data. If we do this function and apply this, this is a way of alphabetizing. We're going high to low, low to high, some data set. We know that we can just apply something like this to a table, but in some cases you might want to have the raw data and then a second table of data. And in that table, you might want to do something like these two things. And you could even combine these so that this table is alphabetical. It happens to be in this case, but that's just by coincidence. And then lastly, along with these two functions, how do we pull a data table with just one function and spit out a subset of that data? We can use this function. Essentially, it's doing the same thing that this filter tab is doing. If we unselect all and just select one, it does something like that. We just want to use the same thing, but in a function, and instead of affecting that data table, to give us a whole new one. So in this case, my array, that blue one, is that whole table. And I'm including, looks like this section of data, if it's above 59. So it looks like in this case, I'm only finding the people in that table whose age is above 59. So that's a quick way of having a second table set of some specific subset of data without constantly messing with and changing this table. And if we did it like this, you can imagine we can have a second one with a second filter options so we can have multiple subsets visible on the sheet if we need that kind of thing.